Board Member Firestone.
Yeah, and it's hard to decide how to use this time and use the limited time that we have together because there's so much here that we've been able to go over just in these workshops and so much more that we haven't. So I think I just wanted to share a little bit about where I see things now, which I think is consistent with what you laid out, Chair. I mean, I do feel like it's necessary to say that we are here because our current protections need updating and improvements. They are inadequate and we need to act. And I think everyone on this board has urgency around that. We need to be able to stop the crashing of the ecosystem. We need to be able to ensure that we're not losing species and that we're not losing the life ways that I think we've heard from tribes are being impacted by that. It's totally necessary and appropriate for us to be in this update, respecting and acknowledging that by officially designating tribal beneficial uses. But we also have to reconcile that, especially with climate change, but even now we are struggling with water supply challenges. And that's why the governor developed a water supply strategy, because we absolutely don't have extra water supply to spare. And just for human needs, our communities and economies, we need to figure out how to improve the system. So I think everyone on this board is looking for a way to find a reasonable and balanced approach to finding a pathway forward. I think everyone is, my sense from hearing the discussion over the last couple of years is that everyone would agree that the best way forward would be if we have collaboration and habitat and flow and science. And I think the voluntary agreements goals and framework are trying to do that, right? They're trying to put forward a pathway forward. I do think it's important to say that certainly the voluntary agreements and healthy rivers and landscapes, that proposal that's been developed was negotiated without adequate representation and transparency, but it has been brought forward into this process. And what we've been trying to do is provide a space to give feedback on that and to be more inclusive in providing a more inclusive space for that feedback. It's in order to do that, what we've done is staff have not only given feedback informally, but we've held workshops now to get public feedback. We've held, staff have actually put together constructive proposals and alternatives for how to make the VAs work to address the concerns that we've identified. And what I really want to see is that the VAs are taking seriously the concerns and issues that have been identified in these workshops, and that staff have gone so far as to propose propose implementations to, and adapt the proposal to be able to really wrestle and address those. So just doubling down on what was, developed before and not adapting to the feedback you're getting and expecting a rubber stamp is not how this is going. And I hope that that's what you're understanding as we go through this workshop, is that we're really wrestling with things and that staff are trying to be constructive in putting forward ideas for how to make this work and wrestle with the issues that have been identified. I think the working groups going forward are opportunities for for working through some of those. I think the staff alternatives, including the ones that we outlined today, are just that. They're proposals for how to make this work. And we need to get to a place. We can't just punt and ignore the issues they're trying to address. We need to have a viable alternative to address the issues that are identified. And that's true for really, when we look at all the workshops we've had, whether it's habitat accounting, base flow protection, so many of these things, they are issues that this board is identifying that need to be changed. And so we need Healthy Rivers and Landscapes to take that seriously and not just double down on resubmitting the same thing without addressing those. So just as there's both the working groups and, there's finishing the additional public comments, I really hope that that's heard. I also, I have concerns that the VA proposal, so most of these issues that have been identified are really around how to make the assets and the overall structure and agreement work. It's not changing the assets. It's really just how do we actually make this implementable and address the issues that are identified. And how do we make those assets real? I think especially today we talked about this, people, I don't know that I'm convinced by the scientific basis report and the staff report that the assets that the VAs will bring will be enough to change the trajectory that we're on. But they do need to be real. And in order to give it a chance, we need to make sure that these issues around accounting, base flow, that it will mean more water, right? And so in order to give them a chance, I'm willing to, it seems like within the scientific basis report, that, there's differing opinions on whether this could work. And I think we all want to give something a try that will be an improvement. But we need to know it's real. We need to know it's an improvement. And so for me, I think it's it allows us to support more take more risks when we know that there's a backstop, when we know that there's a regulatory framework and baseline in place. And so the number one thing I think that needs to be there to make to be able to move forward with a VA pathway is a realistic regulatory framework that complements the VAs, and the structure is set to implement that regulatory baseline, backstop, and complementary regulatory program is that we have the implementation tools in place, implementing now, and we can toggle if the VAs fail or if they fall apart or if at the end they don't work. One of the things that I think these working groups are some of the many working group meetings that we have are a recognition that we need to flesh that out more, because there's not a lot of understanding of how we can make it work. And there's more work to do over the next few years to really roll up our sleeves. But in the short term, in order to adopt something, we need to know that it's workable, that it's not going to, deprive whole communities of their water supply. And it's also not going to make it impossible to operate, our projects and flood control, cold water pool, all of these things. And again, staff have put forward a proposal on that, but more needs to be fleshed out, and we really need everyone to be digging in to help us make that work. Um, to and all of that is to, I think, get us to a place where we can feel comfortable adopting a plan that's really an update and improvement, and it helps bring at least a framework for us to move forward around what we know will be increased droughts and extreme weather, um, what we know around um, the challenges that we have with our changing water supply, and frankly also that help us start to address more of the issues that I think there's a growing priority around, whether it's tribal beneficial uses or harmful algal blooms. And so as I look forward, I think there's still a lot of work ahead, but I am heartened because I think on each of these workshops, folks have really committed. I mean, I've heard a lot from VA parties and from environmental groups, but is really committed to rolling up sleeves and trying to figure out something that will work. And I think we all want to get there. But I really appreciate having the space and time that these work groups have, and then continuing to have the urgency to move this forward as quickly as possible. I don't think we have another choice, and we all really feel that.